Yeah, we're supposed to start? You say the starting now, you're supposed to start.
Yeah, but like there's usually a pause, you know. But in any case, hey everyone, it's Steven from Tostemac, and welcome to another Tostemac Podcast. This time we have a special guest, Thomas.
I'm literally the co-host of the channel.
Well, I mean, you're making more of an effort now. But anyway, on these podcasts, we talk about topics of interest. Either it's by myself or with a special guest.
Co-host!
Anyway, so today we're going to go back in time a little bit. All the way back to our childhood, because today's topic is about why me and Thomas love video games. Over the years, our love for video games has grown alongside the video games as they were growing technology-wise over time, and we wanted to reflect on what significant things we've picked up from video games and where we are right now. Did you really have to yawn?
Yeah, you were going on too long.
I'll start this whole recording.
No!
I'll start this whole recording again.
No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. No more retakes. None.
All right. In any case, the first step we're going to go through is our very first video games. For me, this was before you were born, so I have to illustrate this a bit. It was all the way back during Christmas when me and my older brother Daniel were very, very young. We remember unwrapping a gift and seeing the Nintendo 64 for the very first time. This was our very first video game console, so we were so elated and overjoyed that we couldn't wait for Dad to plug in the console and start playing. Now, the first one I actually played was Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. It's a good game, but I don't really count that as my first video game experience because, as far as I knew, the Star Wars series was a series of movies. So it didn't really feel like a complete immersion to me because of the fact that I know what world it is. So my first actual video game immersion experience was Super Mario 64. I just fell in love with the idea of jumping into worlds that are much different than the ones you take for granted, seeing all kinds of landscapes like underwater levels, lava levels, snow lands, lands that have creatures with cute appearances like the Goombas and the Koopas. It was just so amazing. Like, I felt like I could do anything I want in that game,
including some very suspicious activity with penguins.
Now, Thomas, do we really have to mention this?
Yes, we have to. Your crimes must be exposed.
Look, it was bad enough I had to mention it during the first draft. Do I really have to mention it now?
Yes.
Okay, fine. So, in the first snow level of Super Mario 64, for those who played it, you know what I'm talking about. There is a quest. We have to get a baby penguin from the top of the level, slide all the way down, then bring it back to the mother to get a power star. So, what you can do, and what many of us have done, not just me, so you bring the baby down to the bottom, bring it to the mother, and the mother brings out the star. What you could do then, is grab the baby penguin while the mama penguin's like, what are you doing? You better put that baby down right now. You could bring the baby to the edge of the map and then just drop.
See, just because many people did it does not make it right. You are still morally wrong.
Thomas, in my defense, I did not make the game. I just played it.
And you played it awfully.
It just so happens that it was built into the game where you could do that. And the game would not punish you for it.
And you still did it.
Oh, you're acting like you've never done it.
Maybe once.
See? You have no right to judge me.
I'm gonna still keep judging you anyways.
Well, since we're judging each other right now, how about you talk about your first video game?
Yeah, actually, that is an embarrassing point. We'll get to the story about the actual first game later, but I suppose the first game I was actually able to complete, because, it actually had a frickin' ending and could be played through, was a Toy Story game for the original Game Boy. It was basically just a basic platformer collectathon. Admittedly, not the greatest introduction for me to games. Books were still way ahead of it for me.
But then there was also a couple of Nintendo 64 games you got to play a lot, right?
All of 3 of them. Literally only 3.
And which 3 was it?
Okay. So, mind you, all 3 of these games sucked, and if you ever find ROMs of these by name, I want you to delete them, report them to Nintendo, purge them from existence, and if there are any physical copies you find, I want you to take them and bury them in the Grand Canyon.
You know, you're really stalling here. What is the name of the games?
So wasn't like a Sesame Street one?
Yeah, it was an ABC one.
Yeah, it was a Sesame Street one. There was a Winnie the Pooh one, and there was a Rugrats one, and all 3 of them were terrible. Like, they could not be played fully through. They would keep crashing. They would keep soft locking. Like, the mechanics were barely functional. Like, this was at a time where game developers were just chucking out games left and right and being like, eventually one of these will work.
I mean, few of them did. In fact, I think I have a couple of the games still here. Hold on. Let me see here.
Oh, dear God.
Oh, wait, no. Okay, so there's that one. There's that one. There's a couple of those.
And if we show you the name and the cartridge and stuff and you recognize it and you have one, I want you to burn it. Burn it. Literally throw it into a fire.
Oh, come on, Thomas. They weren't that bad. So, here are some of the Nintendo 64 games we have. And we used to have a bigger collection, but when we moved from California to Maryland, we had to give some of them away. So here's the Star Wars Shadows of the Empire.
Good game, by the way, actually. That one, if you find a ROM, please play it.
So, I'm sure it'll show up on the Switch expansion pass eventually. Then there was my first experience, Super Mario 64. Lots of fun. There was Pokemon Puzzle League. And there are some of the games that Thomas played, which was the Rugrats game.
Burn it, burn it, burn it.
Yeah.
Kill it with fire.
Yeah, looking back, it's not really that good of a game.
It's a bootleg Mario Party that, like, I would rather unironically play Mario Party 10 than play that.
Actually, I think that came out before Mario Party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I don't even know how that's supposed to make me feel.
And here's the Winnie the Pooh game. No, wait, Thomas, what are you doing? You gotta see it.
The temptation was immense. The temptation to just obliterate that cursed cartridge was immense. Seriously, I would rather own a copy of Sonic.exe that actually does what it says on the creepypasta than have one of those.
Now, you may have noticed that some of the cartridges have initials for them. There was a reason for that, because I actually made a bit of a blunder.
Ah, yes, a common occurrence.
Oh, shut up, Thomas. Nobody asked you. Anyway, so what happened was, back when I was still in elementary school, video games were not just fun to play, but they were also a good way for me to make friends, start conversations, figure out who's played what and who doesn't. So I met a couple of friends because of the video games I played. So we were like talking about the experience with the games, possible new games, and there was one particular friend of mine, and we were talking about Legend of Zelda. So at some point, we proposed a trade. So in exchange for my friend's Game Boy Color game of Legend of Zelda Oracle of Seasons, I traded him this. Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time.
Not a wise trade if you know those games.
I was a kid back then, and we were just friends playing around. Now, mind you, I was not the only one who played this game. It was also Dad and my older brother Daniel. They loved this game. So what happens is, after a while, they want to play the game again, so I asked for the trade back, I got it back, but what happened was, all of the saved files that Dad had was gone. More than halfway through the game, all of that progress, all of the hours put into it, and it was all gone.
So the moral of the story of this, by the way, for everybody, is never trust anyone ever.
Now, hold on. Maybe not go that far, but just be careful with who you trade the games with. So, what happened because of it was we had to label which games were ours. I mean, granted, later on it was pretty ridiculous, but that was the mindset we had at the time because we didn't want the games traded out anymore. So, they would be labeled DM for Daniel, they would be labeled SM for Steven. This is a really good game. And then they would be labeled TM for Thomas.
And I got the 3 worst games in the entire set. They all got like 25 or 30 games. I got 3. And those were the 3. 3 not even fully functional games. They were literally prototypes.
You were a baby!
I could throw one of those together now in literally a matter of hours.
Yeah, now, but you were a baby back then. Now, granted, later on you did get access to other games like Mario 64, Mario Kart, Mario Party, stuff like that.
Yeah, eventually. Many, many years.
Oh, it wasn't that many years. But anyway, as the years went by, we started to notice that video games had more to offer than just fun gameplay and fun scenery. You could actually learn things from video games. And one of the prime examples of this was the Jumpstart games. Now, granted, those were computer games, not console games, but back in the day, I thought they were all the same. They were just video games.
And nowadays, they're becoming the same again.
Yeah, that's kind of funny, isn't it?
Yeah, everything's online and no longer in big, clunky cartridges.
Hey, the cartridges were useful back in the day.
Admittedly, they were fun to collect.
Yeah, so what happened was with Knowledge Adventure, the group behind Jumpstart, I was actually one of the testing kids to play around with the Jumpstart games before they got out to the world. So what I remember was me and Dad were going to this facility. There was a bunch of computers, a bunch of kids like me, and we were in this room playing the computer games, and the researchers and developers would be in another room watching how we react to the games. And the big takeaway they had was with the consequences. Because like when it comes to autistic people, we have this increased anxiety when it comes to like making mistakes or making the wrong choice or messing something up.
Yep.
And the developers noticed that when we were choosing the wrong choices, we got a negative feedback and we got upset over it. So later on, the developers went in and changed it so that way the wrong choice doesn't feel as bad. In fact, it started something funny instead. And it worked. So that way it's not as bad of a feedback as it was originally. But the problem is that the wrong choices were so funny that I actually would choose the wrong choices on purpose. Like, I already figured out what the right answer was, but I would pick the wrong one anyway to just see the funny stuff.
Yeah, and that's the stuff that would end up leading to games like the Stanley Parable nowadays, wherein they very much expect you to pick the wrong choices at some point.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how that worked. So that was a big part in games in terms of like how it can educate the players. However, over time, we started to learn that it didn't just have to be educational stuff like math or reading or science that could be a positive feedback or a positive input for the players. We started to learn that over time, as the games advance, there were other things you can learn from it, like how to connect with people and how to be flexible in case the mission objectives change, and how to...
Are you seriously freezing up on this? The answer was how to communicate. And it's ironic because he's not communicating.
I'm in a soft lock. But yeah, with like communicating with other elements of the game. And later on, you could actually learn moral stuff as well. Like the Kingdom Hearts series, where you can learn about like how to deal with the darkness inside you and how to deal with the past mistakes.
Oh boy, the edgelord phase.
Yes, the edgelord phase. But you get what I'm saying. There was a lot more to learn from video games than just pressing button combinations and learning educational stuff.
Yep, and I mean, big example of that you find is, and probably the most popular instance of, your actions have consequences. You ever played Mass Effect? Dialogue choices vary greatly, and the effects are carried over long term, often in ways that are not immediately obvious. Characters will have grudges, characters will have their specific goals and wants, and if you get in the way, they will turn on you.
Yeah, it's actually good that you mentioned Mass Effect because I love the Mass Effect trilogy in terms of how much it has to offer. You're not just battling bad guys, you're talking with individuals from different races, different cultures, different walks of life. You are choosing between good choices and bad choices and learning how later on your actions can have consequences, both short-term and long-term. Like maybe someone you met in Mass Effect 3 can come back to help you in Mass Effect... Wait, I'm actually...
You said Mass Effect 3. Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna get a Mass Effect 6, buddy.
Well, I don't know. Odds are we will. So what I meant to say was taking elements or characters from Mass Effect 1 and then revisiting those elements again in Mass Effect 3, provided depending on the choices you made.
Yep.
And I know Thomas has something to say about Shepard.
Oh yeah, for as amazing that game is in terms of design and gameplay, and like it has so many good aspects, it came around during a period where, although there were great voice actors, voice acting wasn't as much valued in games, and unfortunately Commander Shepard's voice is basically literal wood. Like, not even wood an actor, it's literally a log. Like,
okay,
editing a log right here, I'm gonna put it on Steven's head. That's Commander Shepard right there.
Okay, I would not go that far. The idea behind Commander Shepard was that you were supposed to embody that avatar as you were going through this sci-fi adventure. It had a voice.
Yes, and it is also possible to have a vessel for your character without making them sound like Microsoft Sam.
Oh, would you prefer just dialogue choices and that's it? No voice at all?
To be fair, I think that has been done.
Yeah, in a lot of games, like the Baldur's Gate video games, the Elder Scrolls,
Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy.
But I like
Persona.
it better. One of the reasons I like Mass Effect more so than some of the others is because there was actual voice.
Yes, and the voices of some characters like Garrus and Rex were really awesome. They have great voice acting.
Yes.
Commander Shepard's... No. That sound...
It was not that bad.
That sounded like the voice director ran out of budget and was like, okay, let me get in there. Somebody's got to step up to the plate. I'll take care of it.
It was not that bad.
And it wasn't the funny kind with the Ardanian soldiers in Xenoblade. Because at least they're funny. Think you can take me?
Right.
Don't forget me.
Okay. So anyway, well, while we're on this subject, let's talk about how we branched out to some other game consoles. Because for a long time, we were Nintendo fans. We loved playing the Nintendo 64. But what happened was, as we were visiting other relatives and cousins, we got exposed to other game consoles. Like I remember an aunt and uncle from my mom's side of the family, they actually had the original Nintendo console and a Super Nintendo. And after I played those two consoles, I felt spoiled by the Nintendo 64. I was looking at these 2D games. I was like, what's this? I can't even see what's in front of me. What is this? At least with the 3D games, I could see what's around me. So playing a 2D game was a new concept for me. So then we visited some cousins and relatives from my dad's side of the family, and that's how we got introduced to the PlayStation for the first time. Specifically, Crash Bandicoot. It felt like such a different game. Like, games back then, they had such unique looks to the games. Like, if you were to look at one game, you would know that'd be PlayStation. If you looked at another game, you knew it'd be from Nintendo. Like, if you took a look at Star Fox 64, you could tell that's a Nintendo game. And then if you were to play Spider-Man on the PS1,
yes.
that's another thing.
That was a good game. Oh my god.
That was an amazing game.
I'm gonna be real, like, look up Spider-Man for the PS1, not the one for the PS2. The one for the PS2 with the pizza minigame is not that one. The one for the PS1, you could legitimately release that as is right now, and it would make buku bucks.
Exactly, because people really loved that game.
It had a sort of a predecessor to open world.
It was a sandbox.
Yeah, it had a predecessor open world, sort of open, like, mission selecting that you would see in a lot of future games. It had the great mobility you expect from a Spider-Man game with a web swing, and it had the original music from the series. Like,
that's actually hard to come by.
Yeah, the animated series, like radio stuff. It had all of that. And you would not find that in anything nowadays.
Yeah, nowadays you'd be lucky to find any classic theme songs from old cartoons and current video games, but with the PS1 Spider-Man game, it had all that charm and more. It was the gameplay, it was also like the 3D graphics, the boss fights, stuff like that. Some of it awesome, some of it terrifying. Some of it gave me nightmares.
Oh yeah, the final boss of that game. Wasn't it like... I know that...
It was Carnage and Doc
Ock. Carnage Ock, yeah.
Exactly. It was symbiote Doc Ock, and it was terrifying. It was like nightmare fuel.
But at the same time... You know how much, like, we, like, really love the Marvel movies nowadays for showing great homages to the comics? That game kinda did it first. All the stuff in that game, straight from the comics.
Exactly. Now moving on from the Nintendo 64 and the PlayStation 1, when we visited some relatives in Texas, I believe. No, it was Georgia.
Yeah.
One of those two. When we visited those relatives... That was when I was first exposed to the Xbox, more specifically, Halo. When I saw the gameplay for Halo, I was mesmerized. I was in awe of what I was not only seeing, but hearing as well. Because when you were listening to the music, you heard clear orchestrated music, you heard a choir, which was almost unheard of.
Yeah, I mean, previous games have had voice work inside of the game, either for characters or, like, in the music. Although, generally, they were very limited. There was, like, one arcade game. It was, like, the Evil Auto game. I forget what the exact name of it is. It had a little, like, intruder alert, and that was the only thing they could manage, because anymore, they would have overloaded the system with how much, RAM they needed. And then you had another instance, actually on the PS1, I believe, with Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, that was on the PS1.
Yes. Where at the very end, of course, you have One Winged Angel, very well-known song that was one of the first songs to actually have a chorus in the music. The only problem was consoles back then didn't really handle that much, like, processing power at once.
And so everything had to be the quality of the TV too, arguably.
Yeah, so it had everything had to be bit crushed. With the Xbox, that was probably the first big iteration where you didn't have sounds or music that were bit crushed. They were preserved as they would be, say, on your average computer system at the time.
Right, because even with video game cartridges like this, the audio files had to be compressed in order to fit it all in and not crash the game.
And usually they had to be meaties.
Yeah, and like games like Final Fantasy VII and even Star Fox 64, you heard the voice, but you could tell it was compressed, and the audio quality was a little bit grainy. But with Halo, it was an entirely different story. You could hear the violins, you could hear the drums, the electric guitars. You heard so much, and it was so clear, as if you were in the concert itself, or the recording booth itself. And it was also like the gameplay and also like the enemies that you face there, the Covenant. Yeah, the Elites. I love the Elites back then. They were looking cool and they had these voices like, war.
And about that was kind of a creative use of sound design of the time that would end up being reused for later, like, projects of different companies. So you know those Elite sounds, the war, we're somebody. That would be the American Sergeant character's voice backwards.
What?
I was like Sergeant Johnson or something, or Johnson or Jenkins, one of the two. But they basically took his lines, flipped them backwards, and like lowered the pitch a little bit. And there you go. That's a Coven Elite.
That's how they did it?
Yup. You had to get creative to make your sounds interesting, and the best way they found to make that voice sound alien is just English but backwards.
I did not know that. So, like, all the other times, like, war, da, da. And then even when they're blown up by a grenade, like, war!
Yeah.
You're saying that was all backwards?
Yep. There's
Wow.
a good chance maybe some of the screams could have been just redubbed. However, most of them are probably done as, like, they just took Sergeant Jenkins or Johnson's lines. Jenkins, Junkin, Wintersheimer, I don't know. His lines, and
Get
they
the
just took
names
them backwards. I'm too pretty to die!
Yeah, and it was really amazing, like, as the video games evolved, that you could do more than just have two lines hitting a dot back and forth. That you could do more than just did. You could make amazing landscapes. You could add incredible music that is still loved to this day, whether it be a PC game like StarCraft, or an Xbox game like Halo, or a PlayStation 1 game like Final Fantasy VII. And I think music was a big part of that game, wasn't it?
Oh, big time. I mean, it definitely pulled from some film tropes, which was kind of a tactic that was relied on early on in games. But in the end, a lot of the music there is still remembered today and inspires a lot of what you see.
It is not only remembered, but it was done over and over and over again.
Exactly. Like, you could name so many different themes that took something from the Final Fantasy Battle theme, from the Final Fantasy VII Victory theme, from, like, different world themes, like Under the Rotting Pizza. You would have that inspire a bunch of music from Metal Gear. You would have, music like... trying to think, like the Genova theme might inspire like other alien battle themes and other things.
And then there's the One-Winged Angel.
Oh yeah, and I mean, just because it took inspiration from the Rite of Spring doesn't mean it doesn't stand out on its own. Yeah, and nowadays there's so many game soundtracks that try to copy something like that and do not succeed nearly as well as the original.
It's like, it's one of those music pieces that's so good that when you heard the first note, you would recognize what it is. In fact, there's a funny story about that.
Oh, yeah.
One of the games, Super Smash Brothers, we'll get to more of that in a bit, but there was one time when Sephiroth was getting revealed for Smash Brothers. We were watching the Video Games Awards. You were on your phone because you were trying to look in advance on what it was. I was talking about the show, and you were like, because it was time for the new character reveal.
Yeah, so they announced it at like the beginning of the friggin' show.
Oh yeah. So what happened in the cutscene was Galeem, one of the bosses, was sliced in half. And I was thinking, a sword character? Sora?
I was thinking maybe Dante or Virgil.
And then some mysterious note that I couldn't hear over you. But it was like, for you, it was like the one note and you immediately went crazy because you knew what that one note was.
Look, I like Final Fantasy VII a lot. This was like totally out of left field because we already had Cloud, we already had the protagonist, and now we were getting Sephiroth. And that is the only song, by the way, I will ever excuse, like if you're ever like a music student or anything, it is the only video game music song I will ever excuse for you to say that there is a one-note leitmotif, a one-note recognizable theme. You only need to hear that one note at the beginning to know that Sephiroth is coming and you are going to die.
Yeah, it was that one note, and you were flipping all over the place. I couldn't hear anything from the trailer over you, and you were like moving all over the place. I thought you were gonna break a chair or two.
I wish we recorded it.
Yeah, probably. You probably knock over the camera.
It'd still be content.
Not if the camera breaks. You were so hyped and going everywhere because of that one note.
Yeah? And that's the value of good music in games.
Yes, good music and good visuals in games. Unfortunately, there were some other aspects in the game as well that didn't really sit well with a bunch of grown-ups. and that was violence in video games. Now, in some cases, I can understand because there were some games like Mortal Kombat, Night Trap, and Halo and Doom are kind of guilty of this too, where you see that it's not just about beating up bad guys like beep, beep, beep. You were seeing bruises, injuries, blood, and sometimes gore. So obviously that would have a lot of parents concerned about if the violence in video games would cause violence in real life.
It didn't help that there was a whole hysterical, rampant mess of things where people were beginning to be convinced that video games were the spawn of Satan.
Yeah, and like the same thing when people thought like Dungeons and Dragons were the equivalent of evil cults or something like that.
For those of you who watch Stranger Things, that'll catch you up on what we had to deal with.
Yeah. So, well, maybe not us. That like Stranger Things took place in the 80s. We grew up in the 90s.
Yeah, no. I mean, as in, like, in the sense of, like, how people would demonize games, whether it just be D&D or something like friggin' Pokemon.
Well, maybe not Puzzle League, but you get the idea. So there was this big tangent on, like, violence in video games causing players to be violent. And while it does sound ridiculous, there was some cases that proved the point, unfortunately, like Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto. Those were two of the biggest ones out there.
Oh, let's not also forget the game Bully that managed to get itself banned, I believe, in Australia.
Oh, that's right. That
you played as a schoolyard bully, and your objective was to be a schoolyard bully.
Yeah. So it didn't really make a good image for us. But unfortunately, like if people were so focused on just the violence in video games, they would miss everything else that we've just mentioned, like the beautiful music, the scenery, what you could learn from video games. Once you get past the violence part, you'll see that there's a lot more going on in video games.
Funny story related to that. So it back when, again, strict family, I was forbidden from playing Super Smash Bros. For the longest time.
And I was forbidden from playing any other Smash Bros. Game after the first one.
Yeah.
And that's the weird thing.
Yes.
Like with Super Smash Brothers, the first one, it was like fun and playful as a bunch of Nintendo characters. But then we get to Melee and all of a sudden fighting in video games is bad. Yeah, and my older brother Daniel could play Soul Calibur that has swords, nunchucks, all that stuff. But you're staying for Super Smash Brothers Melee. Oh, no, that's bad. You can't play that.
Yeah, you can't play as the funny monkey Donkey Kong and beat up Pikachu. That's not allowed.
Yeah, it was so bad. People were believing about violence in video games so bad that there were a few times where either Thomas and I had to sneak a video game like Smash Brothers Melee, like hide it in our jackets or hide it in our shirts and just kind of sneak around mom and dad to go to the bedroom where the console was set up, start playing, all the while keeping mom and dad in the dark.
Yeah, and even funnier is the story of how we unlocked Mewtwo in that game.
Oh, that's a good story, yeah.
So the requirement for unlocking Mewtwo in Super Smash Bros. Melee is like a certain number of hours of gameplay in the versus mode. And you had to like continuously play the match. So what we did was we waited for my birthday. I had a huge birthday party. And what we did was we gathered up in Steven's room, turned on Melee and left a free-for-all match on for like 5-6 hours or something, and pretended to be watching a movie the entire time, all the while having at least one person checking outside to make sure that mom or dad were not watching.
Yeah, one participant was like a sentry, just like scouting ahead and reporting what was going on with mom and dad and warn us if the parents were coming, and we would like turn off the screen and like have us doing something else, like maybe showing cards or watching a movie. And we had to like meticulously play around to make sure mom and dad would not catch on to what we were doing.
Yeah, it was like a massive multiplayer version of that one WarioWare game.
It was probably like once or twice that mom and dad checked in, and we had to like immediately switch it to something else to make sure they would not catch on to what was really happening.
Yeah. Luckily, we did get Mewtwo. Steven was the one that ended up fighting him.
I mean, you know.
And then it turned out that Mewtwo was like the third worst character in the game, which made me very sad.
I mean, we had a good time during the party, didn't we?
Yeah, no, it was fun. It was a good time.
Yeah. So, fun. Now that we're talking about, like, Super Smash Brothers, maybe we should start talking about how it all began. Because Super Smash Bros. Was a very different game in comparison to like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, where it's not like just a side scroller to deplete the HP, and it wasn't just 2 people, there was up to 4, and they were doing all kinds of crazy stuff to send people off the stage.
Yep.
So you're more the Smash expert than I am, because I made the mistake of training you on how to play the game, and you got all technical about like, oh, here's the hitbox. Oh, you do this, and that, and when they're up in the air, you press B, B, A, or whatever.
It's not even that complicated.
What do you mean? You make it sound so technical.
It's a baby game compared to stuff like Street Fighter, though.
Ever since I taught you Smash Brothers, I've never been able to beat you in it. Or other fighting games for that matter.
Or any games for that matter.
No, whoa. I beat you in Puzzle League.
Nah. That
Yes, I did. I believe
that was a 3-0 stomp in my favor.
No,
you can watch the Twitch VODs to catch up on that on the Twitch channel.
Yeah, you go check out the Twitch channel and find out that Thomas is lying.
No. Then I'm
talking about fighting games. In fighting games, I could never beat him. Smash Brothers, Soul Calibur, Pokken,
Original Tekken. I like the bear.
Why don't you tell us how Super Smash Brothers started before you make me even angrier?
Yeah, so it's an interesting story for sure, because you kind of have, like, Masahiro Sakurai, creator of Smash Bros. At an early age
Daddy
of 19.
Sakurai.
You really using that term. That is,
What? A lot of people mention him as Daddy Sakurai.
Yeah, so, little Sakurai at age 19, maker of Kirby, and he was actually a competitive fighting games player, specifically with King of Fighters. I think it was like King of Fighters 96 he was a big fan of.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, and so he main Terry, Iori, and then I think like one other character, maybe Shingo. And so what happened was he one day went to an arcade, one of the Japanese like game arcades that they have, and he would go to the cabinet, and mind you, at the Japanese arcade cabinets, especially for fighting games, 2 players would be seated on opposite sides with 2 screens on each side of the cabinet.
Really? I thought there was enough space on the arcade machines for 2 players to play on it.
Not usually side by side in the Japanese arcades, at least.
Oh, okay.
Usually
so that was more of an American arcade thing.
So you would not see the other player's face at all.
Okay.
It was basically online play. And so what happened was Sakurai was just, getting ready, playing serious, and he was utterly dominating his opponent. And then, after he was done playing, he looked around to see on the other side a young couple fuming because they just wanted to have fun. And, needless to say, it did not look like it was going to make the relationship any better. And so Sakurai was motivated from that day on that he wanted to make a game where anyone could win regardless of skill, that anyone had a chance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that does tie very well into teaching good lessons with games, and it's something where I think Smash Bros. And like other fighting games can teach something. Even if it's a zero-sum game, the idea that anyone has a chance and that, you shouldn't just look at a situation and be like, oh, I'm not good at that, so there's no way I can play it.
Yeah, the idea was for Smash Bros. That it's supposed to be a family-friendly fighter game where
Exactly.
anyone can pick up and the controls were easy enough for anyone to master.
Exactly. And so Sakurai then developed development on Dragon King the fighting game. Which, that idea fell flat on its bootay. It was a terrible one, and...
So if it was a terrible idea, how did they get Smash Brothers off the ground?
So, the idea was about to just totally bomb when, I forget if it was him or Miyamoto, got permission to try and put Nintendo characters in the game. So they made a sort of, like, undercover version of the game with Mario, Donkey Kong, Pikachu, and Samus. And Sakurai thought this was going to be shot down. It's like, okay, wait a moment, we're kind of sneaking these characters in. We didn't even let the CEO know this is kind of risky. They show it, and it immediately gets approved.
Immediately. Wow.
Yeah, and so...
I thought it usually takes a lot of convincing, because I remember when Satoshi Tajiri proposed the Pokemon game, what happened was there were a lot of mixed feelings about it. They thought the game was too ambitious. It wasn't until Shigeru Miyamoto stepped in that Pokemon got the green light. But you're saying Smash Brothers got approved instantly?
Pretty much, yeah. It was something where it was definitely a risk taken, but they just thought the idea was so good because it's like, okay, this is free marketing for all these characters. I mean, we may as well. The only thing was, like, people had a little bit of a problem with, again, like, the whole idea of this giant gorilla DK beating up on tiny little adorable Pikachu. And now you have, in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, coming full circle with Terry in the game. Yeah, of course, Sakurai had to get his main.
Yeah.
And now you have Kazuya Mishima over here saying, "This will be your burial ground," to Pikachu.
So it really shows that over time, Smash Brothers became more than just a video game series. It became an experience. There was this tradition in later Smash Bros. Games where people would gather up in crowds and see the presentations on what the new Smash character would be. And this was like a big deal back in the day because what happened was we all came from different walks of life in terms of like video games. And Smash Brothers seemed like that rarity that was able to bring these video game characters across different consoles and genres together that wasn't a Mugen computer game and make it like an official video game. To have a video game character in Smash Brothers was the equivalent of that character being in the pantheon of Greek gods. It was like a showcase of excellence in video games. Because you had... Solid Snake, you had Cloud Strife, you had Sephiroth, you had Kazuya, you also had Steve from Minecraft, Banjo-Kazooie, and lastly Sora and several others. And what this was, it was an amazing but also an emotional experience for many gamers out there. It was like bringing all different audiences and whole different communities together to celebrate this one fighting game that turns out to be an ultimate celebration of video games in general.
And you get some, like, characters you don't expect. I mean, you end up with, like, characters where it's like, oh, this character would never get it. I would like them, but it would just never be possible because the character is, like, too obscure or too, like a side character or something. And then all of a sudden you get Ridley.
Yeah, or Piranha Plant.
Or Piranha Plant.
Because Sakurai said, yes, I can.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, of all the Smash Brother reveals characters, which one was the one that stuck out most to you, where you felt like the most emotional or surprised? Or do I even have to ask?
I was going to say, take a wild guess.
Steve from Minecraft?
No, that's your self-insert. It was apparently about to be banned from competitive because the fact that it turns out people don't like seeing him play Minecraft and block you off from a fight. I think it's funny.
Yeah, it is pretty funny. But I'm going to guess it's Sephiroth, isn't it?
Yes, I mean... It was a situation where it's like completely out of left field, and it's a situation where like
we thought it was just a joke.
Yeah, no, that was the joke character of like, oh, like if Sakurai just said, you know what, I'm done with this. Time to make the most broken character in the game. full stage sword range, freaking giant meteor projectile, and like Kingdom Hearts boss fight level moves. And then they did that. Well, I mean, he's not actually that overpowered,
there were so many reactors that were so shocked. They were shocked and terrified. Like they heard the song, and they were wetting their pants.
Oh yeah,
they were literally
screaming.
They were screaming in terror. And then they saw the gameplay of Sephiroth, and they were like, oh no.
It's like you have this character with this giant sword range. You have, like, the Shadow Flare that's lingering, detonating projectile that, like, stays on you and forces you to do something about it.
You have Giga Flare, Mega Flare.
Yeah, he can KO you at 0%.
It was all sorts of crazy.
Yup, it was.
But my favorite had to be Sora. Because, again, that was another one that seemed very unlikely to happen. But when it did, not only was it exciting, but for many people, myself included, it was emotional because Sora was from Kingdom Hearts, which was Square Enix and Disney. And when you think of Disney, you think of so many childhood memories like from Hercules or Alice in Wonderland or even Pirates of the Caribbean or Aladdin, Tarzan, stuff like that.
Or Nightmare Before Christmas, let's not forget that one.
When you think of Kingdom Hearts, you think about Disney, and when you think about Disney, you think about childhood memories. So for many people, it was really emotional to see Sora in. And it was very unlikely to happen because it was from Square Enix.
Yeah, it was from Square Enix and Disney. Now, people thought that Disney was the reason it, like, wouldn't happen at all.
And I think Disney was all for it.
Yeah, no, that's the thing, is that it turned out, Sakurai revealed, Disney was all for it. Square Enix was actually the one that kept on saying, no, we're not going to be able to do this character right. It's not going to happen. And so they apparently went through so many designs to get the Sora we got. And the craziest thing about it is in the reveal is that the first thing you see that indicates the character after all like the build up and stuff is a Mickey Mouse logo.
When people saw that Mickey Mouse logo, they immediately thought Kingdom Hearts and they immediately thought Sora.
Yeah, I mean, and it's one of those things where it's like this is literally not possible. This has been the thing that people have shot down as an idea every single time. It's like, this is the character you would see in like a fan game or something. Or like when someone like edits on a skin to a character to make it Sora.
Like a mod.
Exactly. It would never be actually Sora.
And to everyone's surprise, they were able to make Sora's character faithful to the original video game series. And that was like also one of the main things that gave Super Smash Bros. Its charm, is that not only do they have these characters in the game, but they are faithful to the original source. Like going back to Minecraft Steve, being able to harvest resources and build blocks or all kinds of stuff. Minecraft is not a fighting game. It is an adventure and building game. So the fact that they were able to get all that in there speaks volumes of how they understand the game. And also like Cloud's Limit Break. There's also a feature with Kazuya. They
brought in Terry Bogart's Go Meter and super special moves, as well as the very specific mechanic for his stage that comes from Fatal Fury Special, which is the whole, like, you, like, gradually break the wall on the side to cause a ring out. That's a lot!
So, once again, it shows that Super Smash Bros. Is not just a fighting game, but it's also like a celebration, a culmination of video games as a whole. And later on, this would go to inspire other games like Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl and also the more recent multiverses with all the Cartoon Network characters.
Yeah. I still want a main Iron Giant. Superman.
Yeah. But anyway, over time, we started to see that it was not just major video game companies like Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft making games. There were also some indie games too, like the Stan Lee Parable you just mentioned, and other stuff like Among Us. That's probably one of the biggest indie games out there. It was big enough to earn an award at the Video Game Awards. Let that sink in for a minute.
And they accepted the award on their living room couch.
Well, back then it was COVID stuff.
Still.
But it was like the fact that a small handful of people could create an indie game like Among Us and have it made so good that it won a video game award speaks volumes of how far video games and technology has come. That it doesn't have to be just major companies. It could be just a handful of people that know what they're doing and they can make a video game.
Yeah, and I mean, if you really missed crossovers and big announcements, Fortnite's right there.
Yeah.
They added Goku.
Wait a minute, Fortnite's an indie game?
Kind of. It was like one of those where it was kind of bought in.
Oh.
Yeah, it has so many different IPs from like Naruto to Dragon Ball to freaking to freaking Halo.
Wasn't there also Rick and Morty in there?
Yeah, Rick and Morty, Doom Guy. Like, that's a bunch of different characters in that. And, like, Naruto! As much as people meme on the format of the game, they actually even stay faithful to the characters and, like, designs and stuff. Like, for example, the thing they added most recently with Dragon Ball, you literally, if you pick Goku or Vegeta, and you pick the taunt of the power-up, they'll go Super Saiyan.
And I think I've seen a few screenshots where there's like a Kamehameha involved.
Maybe? That one I don't remember.
And I'm pretty sure that's in there. But just seeing so many people coming together and creating works of art like this that bring you to another world is always so exciting for video games. In fact, I think you were working on a video game too, weren't you?
Oh, yeah, I've been working on a few. There's one I've released that I helped release with a team. I was a music and sound designer on it. It's one that's we're working on an expansion for it. It's one of those things that, to be honest, we'll honestly get to it when we get to it. We're all university students, so we have a lot on our plates.
So that kind of leads to like where we are right now, where this path of video game has brought us to. And right now, you are making video games.
Yeah, I mean, I started playing them, and now I'm out here making them. I mostly used it as a segue to be able to write my own music and stuff and do my own voice work. But in the end, that's the venue and the vector that got me there.
Yeah. And nowadays, while I do videos that are much different from gaming, I do like advocacy videos for autism. But I think one of the things that video games helps me out with is to make my content visually appealing. That it's not just this kind of recording where it's like we're sitting in front of a camera and just talking. I learned about how to use visual effects and music to make my work stand out from everyone else. And I feel like if I didn't play video games, I would never have thought about it.
Yep, and then this would have been lost to the vast myriad of B content on the internet.
Yeah, pretty much. Aw, you don't think my videos are B content? That's so sweet of you.
B+.
And I hate you. I hate you. I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. So yeah, over time, video games have come a long way, and Thomas and I have been there every step of the way, and we love video games then, and we still love video games now. So, what do you think? What's your experience been with video games? Are there any particular favorites? Are there any video game memories that stick out to you? Or maybe there's something about video games that you're worried about. Let me know in the comments section below and we'll answer it as best we can. So, on that note, it's time to end the video. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. If you enjoy what you see, consider subscribing and liking to Tostemac and clicking the bell icon to stay up to date on our latest videos. And then, later tonight, you can actually check out a live stream on Twitch featuring me. Maybe not him, but me.
Just because of that, I'm about to pop in and invade.
Really? Do you really have to?
Yes.
So anyways, Thank you very much for watching, and until the next podcast, see you later.
Bye-bye.
I still hate you.
Congrats on 1,000, by the way.
Thank you.